Hey guys, it's Athena. Welcome back to Code 3 Life. I have got Sam with me today from the YouTube channel PrepMedic. You should check it out. I've checked out his videos. They're awesome. I'll have a link below in the description. And if I can figure it out in the video, here-ish, I'll work on it. How are you?
I'm good. How are you, Athena?
I'm pretty good. It's my day off, so just keeping it lives.
Absolutely.
But thank you for coming on my channel.
Of course.
I'm very excited, especially to just grow the network of first responders and just talk to a bunch of like-minded people who like the same thing as me. That's always fun. Today, I asked Sam what he wanted to talk about, and he brought up like what helped us get through paramedic school, which is awesome because paramedic school is freaking difficult, and I had a rough time with it. Did you have a rough time with it?
Studied more than I ever had in my life.
Yeah. So we're just going to talk about that because if any of you guys are going through medical school right now and you could use the advice, or if you're planning to sometime in the near or distant future, then we can maybe help you out a little bit. And then for the people who have already been through medic school, you can just reminisce and laugh that you never have to do it again. So, when did you go through paramedic school?
I went through back in 2011, actually, so it's been a little while. I still remember it like it was yesterday, a couple scars burned into my brain from that time, but, I found a couple things that really helped me through it. I don't think there's any, specific trick. I think people are looking for, one-size-fits-all or that one class you can take beforehand to help you, and I really didn't feel like there's one of those. I think it's something that everybody else has to kind of figure out for themselves.
Yeah, definitely. Did you prepare for it at all?
Preparing for it, I basically just talked to people about what it was, what would be challenging, and what the big requirements for it would be. But I didn't take any special classes or, do any prep books beforehand. What did you do beforehand?
Well, I luckily had a bachelor's in engineering, and so I kind of had the how to get through a pain in the ass school experience thing under my belt. And I got my basic EMT, then because I love wasting money, I also got my advanced EMT. Then chapter 2 passed, and it became completely mute. It was great. And then I asked a bunch of people what helped them, and a couple people mentioned that a medical terminology class would be helpful, because then instead of memorizing terms, you essentially learn Latin and Greek, and then you can just understand what words are without having to think it through. So there goes the fridge. That was really helpful for me. I also took anatomy and physiology, which was a prereq.
Okay.
You could either take it as a boot camp in the 4 weeks prior to the school starting, or I just took it at a community college. And on top of that, I also took an abnormal psych class, which turned out to be a reworked abnormal psychology in Hollywood class that they were trying. So really all we did was watch movies about stupid people, including one hour and 7 minute long pornography video. So that was interesting.
Excellent.
But yeah, I felt of all things, the medical terminology class prepped me the most, because we'd be learning all these things and I'd be I know what gastro means. That was incredibly helpful.
It lets you piece together the words of whatever it's coming from. You don't have to relearn it like you were saying. You can kind of reason out what something means even if you don't specifically know what it is you're dealing with. That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, it was very nice. Did you have A&P under your belt before you went in?
I did. Ours was all integrated, and I didn't go through a 2-year degree program. Mine was a certification, start to finish paramedic course. But I was also an intern at a fire department at that time, so they were sponsoring me through, and they put me through a couple other classes before I actually went into it.
Sweet.
I really found once, I was into paramedic school and got going a little bit faster. The thing about paramedic school is it's really fast-paced, and it's really centered on patient care. In nursing school, you do a lot of ancillary stuff, statistics and med math classes and things, but in paramedic school it's all 100% job focused. So what I found really useful for me is because it was so fast paced and I got a lot more from lectures than I did from reading, I would do my best to struggle through the textbook the night before, and then in the lecture, I had some ideas of what they were talking about, and I was able to make some connections a little bit more solidly than if I was just hearing the lecture then trying to struggle through the book.
Gotcha. Were you able to keep that up through the entire schooling? Like, were you able to read every chapter beforehand?
Through most of it, I think what came in time was understanding what was important and what wasn't.
Mm-hmm.
If you had your patient assessment was important, but maybe the lifting and moving chapter was more common sense. So I started to learn how to kind of triage what mattered.
That's fair. I tried that too. I bought the textbook, and then I bought the not required workbooks where you could like go through and take quizzes. I read the chapters before every class for like 4 weeks, and I did the workbook for about 2.
Okay.
They're still empty. Oh gosh, I didn't even have that much going on. Like at the time, I was like in an established relationship, but everybody was like having kids and I think we had 2 weddings and at least 2 divorces. I don't know if we've had more since the end of the class. But I think there was at least 1 kid born too. And I just didn't have that. What was your favorite part of paramedic school? Like your favorite class, I guess.
My favorite class of paramedic school was probably either pharmacology or cardiology.
Okay.
And mainly because they weren't abstract concepts. A lot of things are, really kind of subjective to who's ever looking at them. Lung sounds are an opinion, not an objective fact.
Right.
And things like that. And I was getting kind of frustrated with it, but with like cardiology, it's rules. In pharmacology, it's memorization. And a lot of people hate that. But I really enjoyed being able to go through my EKG and say, well, okay, every QRS has a P, every P has a QRS,
Mm-hmm.
This is the intervals, these are the waveforms, this is what it looks like, and come up with a solution to that. So I really enjoyed that. The ironic part of it is that right now, having been a paramedic for almost 8 years, cardiology is probably my weakest point.
Yep.
When it comes to
it. You lose it so fast.
It's a lot you lose, but I really enjoyed that while I was going through it.
That's fair. That was actually my favorite class too, because they actually just revamped their pharmacology class like the 2 classes before me. So instead of like just having pharmacology, they actually did it in tiers. So first they went over like how cells are affected by individual like electrolytes and that kind of thing, and then they went through how each class of drug can affect each cell, and then they went through and were like, these are the brand names, these are the dosages, and it was brilliant. We had a problem that we had to do. We called it the wall of death, because we had 102 medications we had to learn, and with each medication there were 5 to 10 facts that we had to know about it, like the drug name and the dose, and the pediatric dose if there was one, and the mechanism of action and duration of action, and it was all like on a wall with Velcro like cards, and at the end of the pharmacology module we had to go through and get every single one, and oh my god, I feel like if I went back it would still be there, and I don't know if I'd be able to do it. I've lost so much of it. But cardiology, to me it was just like a language. Like, I love learning languages. I spoke Spanish all the time at home because my mom's first language is Spanish. Like, and to me, it literally is a language. You look at scribbles on a page and you deduce meaning from it based on like grammatical rules and stuff like that. And I just loved it so much.
What was your least favorite part of paramedic school?
The lab time, because clinicals were great because we went to the hospital and the rides were great. But the lab time, we would have like 4 hours every week where we would go in and we'd have to practice like specific skills a set number of times. So you had to like practice putting in an IV and hitting every single checkbox on the way down, something like 30 times. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
That was not my favorite. Like, you place an IV. I've been an EMT for a while, but then of course we had people who came from out of state and weren't IV certified before the class. Did you have anything that you just hated?
There was nothing that I absolutely hated. I mean, the IV education portion of it, of just getting stuck 15 million times in the course of 3 days, was a little bit brutal for me. Just because who likes getting stuck by needles? A lot of it for me was fear motivation going through. I'm dyslexic. I've had a really hard time in school, in like high school, middle school, elementary school. You know, I would always struggled, so I always had this fear that I would, you know, fail that test, whatever. So it drove me to do a lot better, and I ended up doing very well in paramedic school. But I think that constant fear of failure was, while it was a motivator, it was also something that was really hard to cope with for, you know, the extended, you know, years worth of time that we went through. So there was nothing I really hated. I really liked the knowledge base about it, but, you know, there were definitely some challenges.
That's fair.
You know, if you're in a state that allows like waivers and stuff like Colorado, I personally think it's great to get your IV, because then you can actually get a job and work as an EMT.
Because you can't if you don't. You can't get a job without your IV.
Exactly. If you're in a state that doesn't, though, generally you'll have EMTs and paramedics, and it's not going to help. I do not believe it would help you in paramedic school to get your AEMT and then go to paramedic school. I don't feel like the knowledge base is big enough to really give you a huge jump in on it. I think street experience will help you, but otherwise I'm not sure that certification benefits.
Andrew, who's been on the show before, worked in Pennsylvania where they don't have EMT IVs, and just to hear his stories, I'm just like, I can't even imagine being on an ambulance and not being able to start an IV.
Yeah.
So if you're in Colorado, get your IV, don't get your advanced. Because Chapter 2, I think, introduced waivers for EMTs to do IOs and IM epi and a couple other things. And that passed like 4 months after I got my advanced.
So basically for the didactic portion, it sounds like, I mean, if you can keep up with it reading the chapter before, you know, I think you stressed not falling behind, because it is so fast paced. If you fall behind, it's kind of the snowball effect with that, and you're going to get kind of buried. You know, everybody's going to have something I think they struggle with, but also things that they excel in. And it's just, you know, keep going, don't compare yourself to others, I would say, through that. So what about like the clinical portion? You know, I feel like not many people like think about the clinical portion as this really hard part of it, or, you know, because that's not where you see people technically fail out. But I guess in my experience, I've seen that's where people struggle a ton. Do you, like, what advice would you give somebody going into like your clinical portion of paramedic school, whether that's your hospital-based or your ride time afterwards?
So we have 500 hours of didactic in the classroom, and then 200 hours in the hospital that you could kind of dovetail into your class time, and then 500 hours on the ambulance. I honestly struggled a lot on the clinicals because nobody understood what I was there to do. A lot of the time, you know, overworked, underpaid nurses see an extra set of hands and they think, great, they can start all my IVs and do all my EKGs. When in reality, you're there to be like shadowing the doctors and maybe being present for some more advanced procedures and administering medications. So I'd say just communication with the staff that you are doing your clinicals with, just to let them know, like, I'm here to learn, I'm not here to be your tech, but please bring me in for whatever you need. Did you struggle with the clinical at all?
I found that you had to be really hyper assertive.
Yes.
For it. Like, if you're somebody that kind of sits back and waits for direction, even if you're completely willing to do all of that stuff, I found that to be successful there, you have to be super on top of it. Hey, can I go do this? Hey, do you mind if I follow this nurse? Hey, can I do this for you? And I think the other end of that is they will receive you well like that, but I think you have to, while nothing's going on, also be willing to do some scut work.
Oh, of course, yeah.
Like, you know, when stuff's going on, you should be learning, but if it's a slow day in the ER or ICU, wherever you are, if you go and they see you cleaning a couple beds or, you know, helping a patient to the bathroom or doing the things that you're not really there to do, I always found that they would be way more willing to bring you in on something cool and come get you if there was, if there was something else going on.
That's fair.
I think one of my best experiences was actually in the OR, and a lot of it's who you get to. Like, if you get the right doctor and the right set of nurses and things, it will go a lot better, and I think a lot depends on that. But I had the anesthesiologist, the head one, give my phone number out to all the anesthesiologists on the floor, and then they would call me if they had a tube. So they wanted me to be studying, and then if they had a tube, they'd call me. So I ended up getting like 15 plus intubations on one OR day,
Wow.
which is absolutely unheard of.
Yeah.
But it was just that assertiveness and then having the right people.
Yeah.
And that was the big thing. And sometimes you get rotations that they want nothing to do with you.
Yes. Yeah, definitely. And I wasn't trying to say that, like, you shouldn't be doing
No,
the grunt
absolutely,
work.
yeah.
Because, I mean, even as a paramedic, like, you're going to be doing things like making sandwiches and shoveling sidewalks and stuff for patients. Like, you know, that's not your job, but it definitely is your job. My experience was more like I was really willing to do whatever it took to kind of like be in on the team. So I'd like do EKGs and I'd do IVs, I'd take patients to bathrooms, but then it kind of became like that's all people would call me for. So then I did have to get very aggressive because, like, you know, now when I'm in a clinical situation, if I've got a student who's standing at the side, I'm gonna ask them once to come in, and if they don't come in, you're done.
Yeah.
Like, you've missed your opportunity. And I hate that it's like that, but in those fast-paced situations, like, people just don't have the time to sit you down and be like, okay, we're gonna do this, and how about you come in and you can, you know, poke that and do that, and so yeah, being very assertive and just volunteering your time and asking people questions, because people love talking about what they do. That's what this channel is for. I love talking about what I do and shitting on people who portray it badly.
And you have to understand as a student too, it's like we're both preceptors. We both have students on a regular basis that ride with us.
Right.
Like, yeah, on a good day, it's great. But, you know, if you're tired, it takes effort to engage the student.
Yeah.
So if a student is showing that they care, I always find it's easier for me to care about them more and, you know, really go out of my way. But if they're kind of sitting back and I've had a long night, you know, didn't get much sleep or whatever it is, or it's my Friday, I'm less likely to engage them on my own if they're not showing that interest.
Yeah, definitely. My best student, I remember him always. He works at the ER that we drop patients off at all the time. He was riding with me as an EMT student. His name's Jim. He's like 46 at the time. He was a fucking astronaut candidate who like wanted to be an EMT, and he was so assertive. He studied all night. He wasn't on his phone, because that's bullshit. Why are you riding with me if you're gonna be sitting on your phone? But that's beside the point. He was studying. He was asking insightful questions, and I like followed him after that. I like wrote him a letter of recommendation, like, and that's what can happen if you meet a doctor or a nurse or a tech or whoever and you impress them by being very assertive and like very insightful. That can make your career. And oh my goodness, I love those experiences because I love sharing things with people who are excited to hear them. But what about your rides? How did that go for you?
My rides were mixed. For the most part, they were a very positive experience. I got put with a couple different, I got moved around a ton, so I'd do like 2 rides at this service, and then I'd get moved and do 3 rides with this service. So I got moved around like I think 8 or 9 times in the 500 hours.
That's rough. Oh.
So I guess the hardest part for me is I went to a fire department that was very old school. And they were, I think, a kind group of people, but I was also 18 years old, and I was, well, I guess I was 19 at that point, but I was, you know, pretty nervous, and it was just nonstop pranks. And, you know, I had to, like, go home and, like, change my uniform because they were dumping water on me and stuff like that.
Oh my god.
So, that was probably my hardest experience. That being said, you know, if you can take something like that, and if you can show a thick skin, you know, I'm not saying like ignore blatant abuse or somebody being cruel to you, but if it's something where, you know, they're pranking you and it's in good fun, even if it's annoying, like having that thick skin, you know, not, you know, running, telling somebody about it and getting all up in arms and just kind of rolling with it, they're going to accept you a little bit more, I found, and they'd be more willing to bring me in. But, you know, the 500 hours, I think, for me was big because I learned how to talk to people. And, like, I knew my medicine. I knew my meds. You know, we just spent the last year learning it all and memorizing it. But in that, it was taking it from this concept to this actual practice of, you know, going in and, you know, being kind, but still being assertive and still being, you know, having a direction and moving fast, but still being calm. Like, that was all a huge learning process for me.
It is so hard to perfect. I feel like I mess that up every day.
Yeah.
So how long were you an EMT before you became a medic?
I started on ski patrol when I was 16, and that's an outdoor emergency care class that's very similar to an EMT basic, except it kind of cuts out a lot of the medical care. They talk about it, you learn some of it, but most of it's trauma care because it's the ski hill, you know, broken arms, shoulders, whatever. So I started that, worked in that until I was, until I was in my 20s, but I started EMT when I was 17, and then when I graduated, I just turned 18, got my cert, and then worked. I volunteered for a small service for about a year, and then I got my internship with the fire department.
Okay.
And started that when I was 19, so finished paramedic when I was 20.
Gotcha.
But I feel like I would have benefited. You know, now I don't feel at a disadvantage just having done it for so long, but I feel like I would have benefited from being an EMT for another year. You know, having a little bit more experience going into it, just knowing how to talk to people, you know, maturing a little bit because, you know, I was a 19-year-old boy, so, you know, you have some growing up to do at that point, or I certainly did. But, you know, I would recommend that experience. That being said, I don't think it's 100% necessary for everybody.
Right. Yeah, I think people can have as much experience as it's humanly possible to get, and they still won't be ready. So would you say like 2 years-ish is probably a pretty good guideline?
I think 2 years is a good guideline. I think the complication comes with people like with families. You know, they want to make a good living, and there are places you can make a great living as an EMT. But I think most places, to really make a good salary and, you know, have it be a career for you, you almost have to go for your medic.
Yeah.
And I can totally understand somebody with a family trying to switch careers, go into a new passion, like that would be hard to make that 2 years.
Yeah.
But I think generally the paramedic students I've seen, if they have 2 years of EMT experience, they're a lot better prepared.
Yeah. I think just being an EMT, you learn all of the little things that school can't teach you. I've progressed pretty quickly, but I feel like I had maybe a more traditional trajectory because I started out on wheelchair, even though I had my EMT, and that taught me how to talk to like sick people because I'd never done that before. That's just like not an environment I'd ever been in. And then I went to BLS and ALS transfer, and I started volunteering for a 911 position. I actually applied to paramedic school like not intending to get in. I like get nervous with tests, and I was like, I just want to see what the test is like and how bad could it be, so when I'm ready I know what I'm walking into. And they accepted me, and I was just like, oh fuck, I'm not ready. And I told them, I was like, thanks, but I'm gonna defer. And they were like, oh no, this is a one-time offer, and if you defer you might not get back in. So I would also recommend being an EMT. I think 2 years is really the sweet spot because you are confident, but you don't get stuck in a rut. Because I think I was an EMT for like a year and a half before I went to paramedic school. I think less than that. Yeah. So yeah, I don't think that was enough. But turns out I think I'm way better suited to be a paramedic than an EMT. So there you go. It turned out. I watched a couple of your videos, and like honestly, your resume is so long that I can't keep track of it. So, EMT, paramedic. Do you have like all the firefighter certs to qualify you to be a firefighter?
I have my Fire 1 and Fire 2.
Okay.
Through that, and I started my associate's degree in fire science, but I kind of determined halfway through that I wasn't into that, so I'm going for my degree in emergency management now.
Awesome. Do you have like any like plans beyond where you're at for that degree?
You know, it's hard to say. We've both experienced it at our agency of, you know, the growth of EMS and where this profession's going. You know, we're coming from, you know, ambulance drivers in the back of hearse being controlled by the funeral homes to clinical providers that can do, you know, surgical airways and paralyze people and carry a huge pharmacology of medications. So as we grow in a profession, I think that will come with degree requirements. So I think, you know, getting that bachelor's out of the way early for me is important, or it feels important. And then also I think that professionalization and those degree requirements and education and stuff will also bring with it more pay, more respect, more career-oriented positions. And, you know, they're out there. There's great positions for paramedics, but they're not as prevalent as, say, you know, police officers or firefighters. or other public servants. So I just kind of want to grow that. I'm really excited to see where it goes in the future.
Okay, and then you've also got a lot of involvement with SWAT. So what is that all about?
You know, I think one thing a lot of people don't know about EMS is that there's a lot of different branches you can take. And like everybody's going to start kind of in the same vein, I think. You know, you're either going to start as an ER tech or on a transfer truck or on a volunteer rig. And then you can kind of branch out. A lot of people go into a 911 career for a while. But then from there, I mean, I was a certified law enforcement officer in Iowa. And was on their SWAT team in Story County, Iowa, and started their tactical medical program there as it stands today.
Wow.
But that was one of my passions, was that tactical medic side, because there's so much good you can do in that role, and I mean, quite frankly, it's cool.
Oh yeah.
Like,
oh yeah.
You know,
that's why I'm on the team I'm on now. It's because it's cool.
Exactly. But you know, beyond that. You know, it teaches you, like, that for me taught me a lot of, like, long-term care. You know, the things on, like, big events, like porta potties and nutrition for people and hand sanitation and things that aren't glamorous. But, you know, that kind of thing is something that, you know, with EMS, there's a lot of stuff you can do. Do you know kind of where do you want to go with this career? Do you want to stay in EMS, or do you want to move on to something else?
Well, honestly, I have fought like literally every single day from my first day of EMT school to get to the place where I am right now.
Okay.
And I didn't really think past that, because in my first week of EMT school, I heard about the paramedic school that I ended up going to, the job that I'm working right now, and the team that I just got on in May. And I knew I was going to end up there, because that's how I operate. I know I'm not going to be a paramedic forever. Like, let's be honest, with all my back injuries and stuff, I probably have like maybe 5 or 10 years left. Honestly, the way things are going, I don't know where my place would be in it, because community paramedicine is definitely a thing that does not really interest me. I understand why it's important, and the people who do it prevent the issues that cause people to call us in the first place, which is what we want, because people usually don't call us if they're having a good day. And so community paramedicine, while that seems to really be taking off, I don't really think I would have a place there. And with tactical medicine, I don't really know if I'd be able to long term find a place there either, especially since I'm not super interested in going fire or law enforcement. I'm comfortable being where I'm at now, because since I left home for college, I have worked tirelessly towards goals. Now that I'm there, I think I'm gonna rest.
Yeah.
I think I'm gonna take a break. I'm gonna enjoy the cat, enjoy the bird who is quiet for once in my life, and just enjoy life.
Yeah. And I think that's kind of brings a final point that I guess I didn't even think of before you said that, of a lot of people make EMS, I think, everything they have in public safety. You know, and not diminishing anybody with like bumper stickers or anything like that, but you know, you see a lot of cars rolling with their, you know, the lights in the back, and they've got the plate, and they're wearing their EMS shirt all the time, and their pager all the time. They're never turned off. And I think it's important to be a well-rounded human being at the same time. Like, if you don't have interests out of EMS, and EMS is the only thing that defines you, that's a fast track to burnout and tons of issues down the road. So I think it's important, while this is a super cool career and you get to do some really cool things. I mean, you go out with the SWAT team, you've got your own little armored truck, you go out that's unmarked, and it's super cool.
Yeah, it's
right.
A tank.
You get to wear armor, you know, helmets, you know, help people in really austere environments. Like, that's super cool. But there's more to life than work. Like, you're one back injury away from retirement, and you'd have to find something else. And if you don't have another interest, then that's going to destroy you.
Yeah.
So I think it's important to be a well-rounded adult.
Yeah.
Coming into EMS.
That's honestly been like a pretty big, just shake up, shake down, whatever problem in my life currently, because I got to this point, and now I'm having to kind of come to terms with, like, I blew my early 20s working. I did nothing else. I turned 26 in, what day is it, like 2 weeks, and I'm not gonna be in my early 20s anymore. But like, I went to, according to a certain magazine in 2013, the most prestigious engineering college in the country. And then I got an incredibly challenging engineering job where I was working 13-hour days in a place 3 hours away from the nearest hospital. And then I went into EMS. I think the year that I got into paramedic school, between January and May, I had 6 days off. Like, I gave everything to this, and I defined myself like I'm an EMT, I'm a paramedic on the team, I'm like all this stuff. And now that I'm here, it's just kind of like, whoa, do I even have other hobbies? Do I even like have a life? And it's honestly been like a very emotional thing, because if you make yourself your job, if you lose your job, you are nothing. I just think to have something so tenuous define you is so dangerous. Because like you said, I am one back injury away from retirement. I hurt my back when I was 19 years old handling mining equipment that was malfunctioning. And ever since then, I've been in pain every single day. And that could be the end of my career tomorrow on shift. Or you could get in a wreck in the ambulance and that could disable you. Or you could get a head injury and not be able to think straight, or your company could go under, or you could get taken over, or you could just get laid off because the universe is unfeeling and doesn't care about you. Like, you have to have more than your job. And I don't know, what's the divorce rate in EMS? Like 90%, something like that. Like, yeah, I really do think it's so important, but at the end of the day,
is it who you are, or is it something you do?
Right. Yeah. And I think it's a little bit of both. Like, you have to, I feel like you have to be a certain person to really excel in EMS. You have to have a personality that works. You have to, be really good at compartmentalization and all that stuff. But there has to be more to you. Because, I do know people that, like, they go to work, and then they go to their volunteer job, and then they hang out with their coworkers, and then they go home and drink.
Yep.
It's very depressing.
Yeah. But for those of you watching that going like, oh my gosh, this is so unstable. It's not an unstable career.
It's not,
it's a good career.
Hope is not lost.
Yeah, it's just, being well-rounded.
Of
having
course.
Things outside of work.
Yeah.
Is big there.
And fact is, we're in such a bad paramedic shortage. Like, you could lose your job any second as a paramedic, but you will always find another one. Yeah. Everybody needs paramedics all over the country.
Yeah.
So, just don't work for AMR. They're the devil. They don't care about you. You can drop dead and they'll replace you in 5 seconds. Anyway, that's just my plug about AMR. I actually ended up telling the medical director of a town who AMR services that AMR is the devil and should be eradicated without knowing who they were at a Christmas party. So. And I was sober. Anywho, did you have anything else to add?
That's about it. Like we said earlier, I don't think there's a magic pill. I don't think there's one class you can take that's going to make paramedic school easy. You have to put in effort. I mean, that's the other thing, though, is like no one concept in paramedic school is that hard. Right. I mean, you're not delving super in depth in any pathophys or any, disease process.
Yeah.
What makes it hard is the volume. Mm-hmm. I think a lot of paramedics like talking about paramedic school like it's the hardest thing in the world. And it's not. It just takes time and effort. And if you're willing to put in time and effort, I mean, you don't have to be the smartest person ever to really get through it and get good at it. So, like, don't psych yourself out for it is what I would say.
Yeah, definitely. I think kids today, like, are kind of scared of hard work and the commitment it makes. But as long as you are not scared of it and not scared of, like, a couple sleepless nights, and you'll get through it and you'll be done. You'll be a paramedic and you'll make $12 an hour. Just kidding. I make more than $12 an hour. But not by much. Oh, God. No, I work at a place where they pay us kind of fairly. Anyway, well, cool. Thank you so much.
Of course. Anytime.
I'm so excited that we got to do this and that I happened to work closely with someone so knowledgeable, and it's really great.
Thank you. Thank you for having me on. I'm excited to see where you go with this, and check me out if you haven't, and I'll probably be bringing Athena on my channel at some point in the future, so you can watch that video when it comes out. I'm sure she'll post something about it.
Yeah, I will. All right. Thanks, guys, for tuning in. I'll see you on the next one.